There we go. Good afternoon and welcome to the Big Show today. The Big Show featuring me, Paul Zeise. We are brought to you by FanDuel Casino. We're brought to you by Archie's on Carson Street. We'll talk about both in a little bit. We obviously are always thankful to our sponsors. Today we've got a lot to get to. And of course, the Steelers are the number one topic. The Steelers are always the number one topic, especially on a Monday after a game like they played on Sunday night. I was at the game. It was kind of an interesting thing because I got sick during the game and I had to leave. So the interesting thing was, thankfully, there's a million ways you can watch the game, and I was able to watch the second half, actually this morning a little bit. And the one thing I will say is that I think that it's very clear that they bet on a secondary that's just not very good. And now they lost to Sean Elliott, and I think that's a really big loss for them. I think it's one of those things where if you look at him and you look at what he does, he's their best safety, and without him, I think that these guys are going to struggle. But let's face it, when you watch the secondary of the Steelers, you watch them try and stop the passing game, and you watch them try and slow down a guy like Jordan Love. It's very clear they are just basically schematically not very good. They're not very fast. I think that they also probably need to figure out a way to help out some of their corners. I think Darius Slay is cooked. I don't think he should play anymore. And I think the other part of it is when you look at the way that they play defense. I mean, I heard Mike Tomlin after the game say, well, it's not those little passes in the flat that's killing us. No, it's the big chunk plays. Wrong. The big chunk plays stink. I get it. And you don't want to give them up. But when it's death by paper cuts, that's just as bad. I mean, Jordan Love threw, 360-some yards against the Steelers, and a lot of it was death by paper cuts. In fact, he put that pass in the flat. He made that basically, okay, we need 6 yards or 7 yards or something like that. And here's the other part about it. And this is probably the most concerning part about it, if you ask me. And that is, okay, the fact that you have a guy like Darius Slay out in the flat at least once, but probably more than once, right? Where he's out there and the receiver just runs right past him and he misses the tackle. That cannot happen. And that does happen far too often. Then you've got Tucker Kraft, who the Steelers put in the Hall of Fame last night. I mean, honestly, I started the night way behind in fantasy football, but I had Tucker Kraft. I'm like, I got a tight end. How am I going to ever catch up? Well, guess what? I caught up in one. And the reason I caught up in one is because he went crazy. It seems to me like it's ridiculous that Mike Tomlin, who cut his teeth as a secondary coach, who's a secondary guy, allegedly, who's a guy who seems to know defensive backs and all the other good stuff, that this defense, the defensive backs that he got, and I said it last week, Jalen Ramsey is not Jalen Ramsey from 5 years ago. Okay? He's not. Then you've got the fact that you've got, Darius Slay, not good. He can't run it. He's just not good anymore. He can't play. And look, Joey Porter Jr., if he was as good as he is loud, guess what? If he was as good as he is loud, then they'd have something. But all he is loud. He makes a few plays here and there, and guess what? Everybody in the stadium knows he makes a play. Why? Because he acts like a ding-a-ling on the field to make sure we all see him. And I say, if you're going to do that after you make a good play, do that after you make a bad play, after you get a penalty. Do that after you get cooked. Give up a big pass. I never understand these guys. They all want to dance around and act like idiots when they do something good. Well, guess what? If you're going to look at me, well, guess what? You need to do that when you're doing something bad. The bottom line is The secondary was supposed to be something they invested heavily in this offseason. It was supposed to be something they made better, and it hasn't been. And when you evaluate what Jalen Ramsey has done, he hasn't been close to the guy they've needed him to be. And there are some people that say, oh, well, he just needs to make sure that he is, out here making plays, and he just needs to make sure that he starts getting back to being the guy he was. He's never getting back to that, ever. The bottom line is he's not going to get back to that because he's old. And he looked old the other day. And he played old the other day. So, to me, the biggest problem with the defense is the secondary. I don't want to hear anything more. I mean, there's a lot of problems, too. But the other problems could be solved with three things. If Alex Highsmith, if TJ Watt, if Cam Heyward started playing like Alex Highsmith, TJ Watt, and Cam Heyward are paid to play, that would be a big thing. That would go a long, long way to solving some of these issues. I heard something today that I was like, no, that absolutely that cannot be the case. I think, that's just, somebody that's piling on and burying TJ Watt. Okay? But it's true because I looked it up. TJ Watt has 4 sacks this year. Forget for a minute that the Steelers have played 7 games. But yesterday on Sunday afternoon, Myles Garrett had 5 sacks in one game. He had more sacks in one game than TJ Watt has the entire season. That's a problem. So, again, I think on the front end, TJ Watt, Cam Heyward, Alex Highsmith, the 3 guys that are paid to play, to perform, if those 3 guys were doing, what they're paid to do, some of this would go away. But at the end of the day, the defense they have, it has a chance to be good if these guys can perform. And I'm talking about the stars. Derek Harmon, I think, is steady and does what he does, but he's a rookie. You should not have to rely on a rookie, period. And I think he's been okay. But it's Cam Heyward. It's Alex Highsmith. It's TJ Watt. The 3 guys that are paid handsomely to be superstars have not been superstars. That's been a problem. Jalen Ramsey's paid as well, but you know what? We knew he was a step slow or half a step slow from what he used to be. He's still, I think, fundamentally a good player. He's just not a star. Some of the other guys, Patrick Queen had one half of one game this year where I noticed him. Most of the rest of the time, he's just sort of a guy out there. Peyton Wilson is a guy, I have no idea why people like him or want him or whatever, but they do. They love him. And so I feel like it's going to be a situation in my mind where these guys, some of their stars have to play better. I think schematically they've got to get better, but they also have to stop kidding themselves. They're old. Their defense is old. Their best players are old. And as a result, they're going to have to change what they're doing. The scheme used to work. Honestly, I don't think I've ever drawn up a defensive game plan. But if you give me, the guys from the early 2000s, if you give me Troy Polamalu as my safety, and you give me, a couple of guys that go around him, and you give me, James Harrison and some of these guys, I probably could put together a defense that works. One of the biggest criticisms of this defense has been forever the fact that, and I'm talking about the scheme and the game plan, the fact that it's so simple. Teams know exactly what's coming. They know exactly what they're doing. And it hasn't changed for years. I saw Julian Edelman was on a podcast a couple of weeks ago talking about how when they played the Steelers, they laughed because they knew exactly where everyone was going to be and what they were going to do. It was almost like not even a day at the office. And again, they probably, they were able to get away with it when they had a defense full of studs. Some of those guys were, just all Hall of Famers. They were all-timers. They just made plays on their own. They made plays because they were just better than the guys in front of them. James Harrison, you could scheme all you wanted to try and stop him, but if he wanted to get to the quarterback, he was probably going to get there. It didn't matter what the scheme was. And I think, now they don't have those guys. And let me say about this too. I think this defense is soft. I'm sorry. I mean, they march around and they prance around and you hear them talk and you hear them talk in the offseason and all this stuff. Like they're still the big bad Steelers. They're not. Nobody is afraid of the Steelers anymore. They're not a team. Their defense isn't going to hit anybody. They're not out there, making you think, boy, if I run through this hole, I might get lit up. TJ Watt makes a few impact plays here and there, but I think he's even lost a step. And what makes no sense to me is that he played by far the most snaps of any of the linebackers last night. Like, he's your oldest guy. Why are you not trying to make sure that he's fresh in the fourth quarter when you need him, or middle of the third into the fourth when you need him? And the idea that Nick Herbig, well, we can't play him because he doesn't set the edge enough against the run, so he's a one-dimensional guy. Well, you know what? Jordan Love, I mean, they didn't run the ball very well last night, and guess what? Jordan Love just picked you apart. Maybe if you had Nick Herbig in there, he might have hit him a few times. I'm just saying it's one of those things where it's so frustrating to watch because there's an arrogance about the Steelers in that they still think that everything that was earned by a bunch of guys who are no longer here, still applies to them. I was talking to somebody last night at the game, in fact, and I said, let me ask you a question. Cam Heyward, TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, 3 highest paid guys on this team, or I think actually on the team, but definitely, I think Metcalf might be higher paid than those guys, but the 3 highest paid guys on defense. Okay? How many combined playoff victories in Steelers uniforms do they have? Guy was like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7. Wrong. They have 1. Cam Heyward. I think he was a part of 1 playoff win in a Steelers uniform. I think he was on the team for a second one, but I think he was hurt. So he's basically played 1. The only other guy who has experienced a playoff win on this roster is actually your best player, Chris Boswell. And that speaks volumes. I mean, volumes about what they've accumulated over the last 7 or 8 years. So these guys running around now with their chest puffed out, telling everybody that they're the big bad Steelers, guess what? You ain't. It used to be, well, boy, the Steelers are the team that everyone circles on their calendar, on their schedule, and they're going to be like their Super Bowl, and the Steelers are going to get their best shot. You know what good teams do when they circle the Steelers? Win, because that's what they are nowadays. When they play good teams, they just turtle up. I don't know what they're what we're talking about here with them. So now it gets to a point where what has to happen? What has to happen? I know everybody talks about they need to fire Mike Tomlin. Obviously, I think that here's the thing I would say with I actually there's a lot of things that I have really strong opinions about. That's one that I don't have a really strong opinion about. I mean, you could fire him, and I think that'd be okay, and you could let him, keep him around for another year or whatever. That would be okay too. Neither one of those things moves me emotionally like it seems to so many other people. But this is what I'll say, okay? When you look at Mike Tomlin, over the last, 8 years, 7 years, 8 years, they've not won a playoff game in 8 years. Over the last 8 years, they have not won a playoff game, right? We all know that. Since then, they've changed offensive coordinators multiple times. They've changed defensive coordinators multiple times. They've had a zillion staff changes. They've had a front office shakeup. They got a new general manager. They've gone through about 7 different quarterbacks. Okay? There's only been one constant. It used to be the strength was, well, the constant is you've got Mike Tomlin because he's the best young coach in the game or whatever. I mean, listen, Mike Tomlin, honestly, if you look at his record and his career, his first 4 seasons, and again, people get really sensitive when you say his first 4 seasons when he had a team that was built by somebody else. He did. And oh, by the way, he inherited a team that had a franchise Hall of Fame quarterback entering his prime, who had already won a Super Bowl. His first 4 seasons, he won 5 playoff games. He won a Super Bowl. He was in a second Super Bowl in his first 4 seasons. Since then, he's 3-8 in the playoffs. He's literally become Marvin Lewis, except, actually Marvin Lewis didn't even win. How about he's become Marty Schottenheimer? That's what he is. Guy, gets his team to play really well and hard and all that other good stuff and ekes out a winning season almost every year and can't win in the playoffs. I mean, when people say, well, he's never had a losing season. Well, that's unless you count the postseason, because in the postseason, he's got a losing record. And the thing about it is, if you're the Steelers, you have to start to evaluate these things. I think the Penguins came to it. It took them 2 years to come to the conclusion it was probably time for Mike Sullivan to move on. And he won 2 Stanley Cups, and he won them a lot more recently than Mike Tomlin won 1 Super Bowl. So all I'm saying is when you look at the big picture, it's always the same to me. There's one constant here. Throughout all these 8 years where they haven't been able to win a playoff game, there's one constant. Again, multiple coordinators on both sides of the ball. Multiple general managers have been here through this. We've had, they brought in Andy Weidel to really try and help them with their personnel moves. We've had different coaches on both sides of the ball in terms of assistants. We've had different associate head coaches. We've had a bunch of different quarterbacks. The one constant has been Tomlin. So to me, that's the argument I would make if you want to make an argument for why he needs to move on. It's because this is 100% his team and this is 100% his mess right now. So, the flip side of it is, you look around the league, it's not easy to have a winning record every year. Now, we can argue about what that means, but I would tell you this. If you look at, for instance, the Eagles, okay? If you look at, the Eagles, they had a coach who won a Super Bowl. The next 2 years, he went 9-7. The third year after the Super Bowl, they had a losing record. They fired him. And people say, well, you just fired a coach that won a Super Bowl. And then what happened? They bring in Sirianni. In his second year, he's in a Super Bowl. And now this is and last year was about his 5th year or something. He wins the Super Bowl. The idea that you have to have 3 coaches in 85 years in order to be able to be successful is silly. People say, well, that's the model. They've won 6 Super Bowls. Yeah, they've won 6 Super Bowls, and that's great. 4 of them came in the 1970s. So let's not get it twisted. Since 1980, okay, when, by the way, in the 70s, they happened to have the, 17 Hall of Famers or whatever that team was, right? Since 1980 till now, they've won 2 Super Bowls, which is good because, there's some teams that haven't won any. But let's not get it twisted. Those 6 Super Bowls haven't been inflated from the standpoint of 4 of them happened in the 1970s in a different era of football. Before free agency, before the passing game really became what it is, before all the different things the way that the NFL has changed. So to me, I look at what they're doing and I say, I can be convinced either way with Mike Tomlin. I lean towards it's time. I look at what the Penguins did and say, that's probably the right approach. They gave him enough chances to get it right, and it became clear they needed to do something. It just is one of those things. So I'm there. But, here's the one thing I'm going to tell you. And I wrote about this today in the paper. The Steelers brand is tarnished. The Steelers brand is no longer the Steelers brand. They need to tweak some things. They need to do some things differently. One of the things that struck me last night, and it's been multiple times each year now for at least the last 5 to 7 years, they played a game in a stadium where the opposing crowd had to be about 35% of the people in the stands, if not a little bit more. It was so ridiculous. Aaron Rodgers, after the game, is talking about how, well, this is the first home game I've ever been a part of where I had to go to a silent count to drown out the crowd because they were yelling, "Go Pack, go," or whatever. That's embarrassing. I mean, we're talking about, we go through a place where you've got, 15, 20-year waiting list for season tickets, to where the waiting list now is down to about 2 years, really. But here's the thing. If you think about this, most of the fan base is old. They don't like to go to all the games. They especially don't like to go to night games. And to me, that's sort of symbolic of what the Steelers are. They're an antiquated team with an antiquated idea of what they are and how you win in the NFL in 2025. I got news for you, right? I can't emphasize this enough, but I got news for you here. Like in 2025, you're not going to have a situation where you draft, 4 Hall of Famers in one class and then they stay with you for the next 10 years? You're not going to do that. So you've got to adjust what you're doing. And they've got to adjust their thinking. They're so concerned about not change, no change, no change. We're the model of stability. We do things the right way. We always do it this way, and this is the way we've done it, and it's worked for us in the past, so how can you argue with us? Again, I don't care what you did in the 70s. This is a different era. And to me, they need to get back to understanding that in this era of football, you've got to be bold, you've got to be bright, you've got to make bold moves, you've got to be willing to make change, you've got to make sure that you put yourself in position to win. And not, this thing where we're going to go out and sign a bunch of what I would call Band-Aid players, okay? To me, I look at the Patriots as a great example. You know what they were willing to do? Hit rock bottom for a year or two, and guess what? They ended up with their franchise quarterback. And if we got into a situation of where, the playoffs were to start, which team do you think you'd rather face? The Steelers or the Patriots right now? Oh, I know the Steelers beat them. It took five turnovers for the Steelers to eke out a win. The bottom line is, if the Steelers played the Patriots in the playoffs, I know who I'd be picking to win. And the thing about it is, it's because they were willing to say, we're going to try and rebuild this thing, as opposed to we're so obsessed with going 9-8 every year that we're going to keep signing just enough guys to slop together these 9-8 seasons. And then we're going to draft in the 20s. Then we're not going to get our quarterback. And then we're just going to, pick up the geriatric guy of the year. This year it's Aaron Rodgers. Last year was Russell Wilson. The year before that, he's not geriatric, but they thought he was the magic performer, Mitch Trubisky, who was in Chicago, wasn't very good. Then he went to be a backup to Josh Allen, and all of a sudden everybody's like, well, this guy is unbelievable because he sat for a year watching Josh Allen. And it's like, how does that even work? What are we talking about here? Anyway, my point is, you look at what the Steelers are doing. Their model doesn't work anymore. And the other part of it is, and this is the elephant in the room that I actually have been talking about for the last 5 years, I think they've wasted a lot of money signing TJ Watt. Money they could have used elsewhere. And that's especially true with this last contract. Made no sense to me. And you look at every year, he looks like a guy who's getting a little bit older. But look at the guys they brought in. Jalen Ramsey, right? 5 years ago would have been great. Now, he's just sort of good enough. You put him out there, he's just sort of good enough. When you play the bad teams, he'll do fine. Darius Slay stinks. You brought in John Smith for what reason? I have no idea what you brought that guy in for. I mean, what is he doing here? He's, to me, one of the most wasted players they have on their roster. But you bring him in because he's just good enough. He's an NFL guy who kind of knows what he's doing, right? That you bring in Aaron Rodgers, and I had no problem with them bringing in Aaron Rodgers. But my point is, you've been trying so long to just slop together whatever you can slop together on this team, right? On this roster, that it doesn't make sense. Like you've got to get a quarterback. Period. Guy for the future. So it just is really, really difficult for me to understand what they're doing, because I really believe that it is, just kind of stuck in the same sort of place they've been. And that makes no sense to me. It just doesn't. I feel like, if you have a chance to go out there and be bold and get things done, then you do. But they aren't willing to do that. By the way, FanDuel Casino is the FanDuel app. Get on the FanDuel app. You can do all your betting live on the FanDuel app. You can actually do it from your phone. You can do it from your computer. FanDuel app gives you the opportunity to make all kinds of bets. Let's look tonight at something. We'll say we will single in on the actual World Series game, Toronto at LA. And there is a number of different ways that you can bet on this game. Obviously, if you want to bet the over-under, it's 8.5. Actually, it's now down to 7.5, which means a lot of people are betting the under. I'm sorry, a lot of people are betting the under, yes. And so now it's down to 7.5. The Dodgers are actually minus 190 in this game, which means you bet 190 on the Dodgers, you win 100. You can bet on Tyler Glasnow strikeouts if you want to do that. Toronto is actually rolling out Max Scherzer tonight. You can bet on, how many strikeouts he gets, how many innings he gets. There's a number of different ways you can bet. You can bet Ohtani to have more than one hit. If you do that, it's plus 160. You can bet on Vlad Guerrero, for instance, to have more than one hit. So go to FanDuel Casino, get on the app, FanDuel app, and you can do all your betting on the FanDuel app. Also, and this is probably one of those things where you hear me say it all the time, but I'm going to say it again. Tonight is the night where we call it a sports equinox. There is a sports equinox tonight. That means all four of the professional sports are playing tonight. Very rarely happens, but all four of them are playing tonight. Monday Night Football, we've got World Series, we've got obviously the NBA is playing tonight, and the NHL. The Penguins actually play tonight. So sports equinox, you could actually you're looking for a place to go watch it. Well, guess what? All of the games are always on right here at Archie's on Carson Street. Get down to Archie's. Archie's is home of 80-cent wings Monday through Thursday. And again, all of the games are on. So if you want to watch all of the games for the sports equinox, get down here to Archie's. And, of course, they have some of the finest wings in Pittsburgh. And, of course, they have the Paul Zeise grilled cheese sandwich. So get down here. When you come here, say hello to Archie for me. Tell him I sent you and that you want to try some of his wings. In fact, I hear that the Duquesne sauce is like the newest all the rage of all the people that eat wings. They come here to try the Duquesne sauce. So come down here. Tell Archie you want to see the Duquesne there. You want to try the Duquesne sauce. Couple more minutes before we get out of here, actually. And one of the things that I did want to talk about real quickly was the fact that Pitt actually has pulled themselves off the mat and looks like they might be a good football team. Now, the one thing I would caution, they haven't beat a good team yet. I mean, here's what you notice. Boston College, Florida State, Syracuse, and NC State, the four teams that Pitt has beaten in the ACC are all in the bottom five in the ACC. Stanford, who they play this week, is right ahead of them. So they literally, they're going to be 5-0. I mean, I can't imagine they'll lose to Stanford, but, we've seen stranger things. But they're actually going to be 5-0, and they're going to have 5 wins against the 6 worst teams. 5 of the 6 worst teams in the ACC they've played, or they will have played. Then it gets real. Then we'll figure it out. But I like this Mason Heichel. I think the defense is pretty good. I think they've got a real, real good chance to make a little run here. We'll see. They play Notre Dame coming up, and there's a lot of other they play Georgia Tech, they play Miami. But at the end of the day, I think they might be on to something. All right, we'll do it again on Thursday. Until then, enjoy your day. And remember, get down here to Archie's. I'll be here for a little bit if you want to say hello. Until then, good night.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.